I'm eMpTyG, and welcome to another episode of Good Clean Commander. And today is a little bit different. Actually, I got some help with Ginger on writing the script, so huge thank you to Ginger for helping me, produce this because holy heck, it's a lot of effort to write and edit and play the games and all that stuff. So thank you for your help, Ginger, here. And before we also get started, I will call out too that I am playing my commander, which is from a EDH deck tech video that I did, Lagomos Hand of Hatred. So if you're interested in that video and that deck tech, I am playing a little bit of a different deck from that. And I also have a more recently updated list that I'll share in the details below. So if you're interested in seeing the changes I've made, feel free to check that out. Another thing too, before we get started, it really helps the channel grow if you can like and subscribe. In addition, if you have time, we really appreciate if you leave a comment as well, because we also like hearing from all of y'all. And if you are really excited about, this Commander content and you want to hang out with us, come check out the Discord server as well. I've been trying to set up a lot of games so I could, cast spells with all of you and, I don't know, have fun, build a community, all that good stuff. So anyways, I'll stop rambling here and let's go check out the game or watch the game. Let's have a good clean game. How's that? First up, we have Austin, who brought his $30 budget brew of Anje made of dishonor. His deck's goal is to lean into vampire tribal synergies while using blood tokens to help drain out the table. And in his starting hand, he has 2 swamps, Smoldering Marsh, Voldaren Estate, Epicure of Blood, Malachor Blood Witch, and a Theater of Horrors. Ginger is playing her upgraded precon of Firkraag, Cunning Instigator. Her deck's goal is to control the flow of combat through a combination of goad effects, throw down scary dragons, and using Firkraag's ability to gain resources. Her starting hand has a Rogue's Passage, Treasure Vault, Path of Ancestry, Izzet Signet, Light Up the Stage, Public Enemy, and an Ancient Copper Dragon. Next, we have Aaron playing Adrex and Nev Twin Casters. His deck's goal is to use his commander's ability to double up on token effects and overwhelm the board. Leaning into Simic Value, this deck is something to watch out for. And in his starting hand, he has an Avenger of Zendikar, Lotadora Mirror Lake, Vine Glimmer Snarl, Protogenitor Mimic, Springbloom Druid, Blighted Woodland, and a Rapid Hybridization. I am playing Lagomos Hand of Hatred. My deck's goal is to lean into my commander's ability to make tokens, gain value from my graveyard, and drain the board. I tried to make this a friendly version of Lagomos, so I'm not running a lot of flashback effects to trigger my commander's tutor ability. And in my starting hand, I have a Mountain, Rakdos Charm, Star Compass, Command Tower, Emistron Predator, Deadly Rollick, and a Talisman of Indulgence. Austin draws and starts us off by playing a tapped Smoldering Marsh. He then passes to Ginger. Ginger draws and plays a tapped Path of Ancestry, naming dragons as it enters. She then passes to Aaron. Aaron draws, plays a tapped Littlejar Mirror Lake, and then passes the turn. I draw for turn and play a Scalding Tarn. Paying 1 life, I crack to fetch a tapped Sulphurous Mire. I then pass to Austin. Austin untaps, draws, and plays a Swamp for turn. He then passes to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and plays a Rogue's Passage. She pays 2 to cast an Izzet Signet, then passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron untaps, draws, and plays a tapped Vine Glimmer Snarl as his land for turn. He then passes to me. I untap, draw, and play a Command Tower's land for turn. Paying 2, I cast a Talisman of Indulgence, and then pass to Austin. Austin untaps, draws, and plays another Swamp. He then pays 3 for a Theater of Horrors. Theater requires Austin at the start of each upkeep to exile the top card of his library, and he can cast those cards exiled if an opponent took damage. With that, he passes the turn to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and then pays 3 for a Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind. She plays a Shatter Skull, the Hammer Pass, as her land for turn, and decides to have it enter tapped. She then passes to Aaron. Aaron untaps, draws, and plays an island. He pays 3 for a Springbloom Druid, and sacrifices an island to search for an island and a forest to put it into play tapped. He then passes the turn to me. I untap, draw, and play a mountain. I then tap 3 to cast my commander Lagomos Hand of Hatred. I then move to combat and call upon his lovely sidekick Ella, a 2/1 elemental creature token with trample and haste. I decide to send Ella in for first blood at Austin, who takes 2 damage. Moving to my end step, I have to sacrifice Ella, knowing we'll be reunited, and pass the turn to Austin. Austin untaps and has a trigger to resolve for Theater of Horrors during his upkeep. He exiles a Tectonic Edge. Continuing his turn, Austin draws and plays a Voldarian Estate as his land for turn. He then taps out to cast his commander, Anje, Maid of Dishonor. When she ETBs, Austin creates a blood token. He then passes the turn to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and plays a Treasure Vault as land for turn. She then taps 5 to cast her commander, Firkraag, Cunning Instigator. This triggers her Path of Ancestry, allowing her to scry 1. Choosing to put that card to the bottom, Ginger moves to combat. Ginger attacks Austin with Firkraag. When Firkraag attacks, they goad target creature that player controls. Ginger chooses to goad Anje, and Austin then takes the 3 commander damage. In her second main phase, Ginger casts Light Up the Stage for its spectacle cost, exiling Tectonic Edge and Thematic Compass, which she can play until the end of her next turn. She then passes to Aaron. Aaron untaps, draws, and plays a Blighted Woodland for turn. Then, he casts his commander, Adrex and Nev, Twin Casters. He suspiciously leaves 1 blue mana open and passes the turn to me. I untap, draw, and play a Snow-Covered Swamp as land for turn. I then pay 4 to cast an eMpTyG Predator. Moving to combat, Ella clocks in for her day job, and I send her over to Ginger because that meeting could have been an email. With no blocks, Ginger takes 2. Having no other plays, I send Ella home for the day and pass the turn to Austin. Austin untaps and resolves the Theater of Horror trigger and exiles an Arcane Signet. He then draws for turn. Moving to combat, with his goaded Anje, Austin swings her at me. Not wanting to take commander damage and being emotionally damaged from an Anje death in a previous game, I cast Deadly Relic targeting Anje. Austin responds by sacrificing a blood token, draining his opponents for 2, and gains 2 life. Deadly Relic resolves, and Austin sends Anje back to the command zone. Moving to his second main phase, Austin is now able to play Tectonic Edge and Arcane Signet exiled under the Theater of Horrors, because his opponents lost life this turn. He then passes to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and plays a Tectonic Edge, which she has exiled from her previous turn with Light Up the Stage. She then pays 2 to cast Thematic Compass from exile as well. Ginger pays 5 to cover the Ward 2 cost to cast Public Enemy targeting Adrex and Nev. This forces every creature to attack Aaron each combat if able. She then moves to combat and swings Firkraag at Aaron, goading his Springbloom Druid on attack. In response, Aaron casts Rapid Hybridization, targeting Firkraag. Ginger has no response, so her commander is destroyed. She sends him back to the command zone and creates a 3/3 Frog Lizard. Ginger then passes to Aaron. Aaron untaps and draws for turn. Paying 1 for a Soul Ring, he follows it up by tapping 3 to cast a Growth Spasm. Thanks to Adrex and Nev, he creates 2/0/1 Eldrazi spawn tokens and fetches a basic forest, putting it onto the battlefield. He then moves to combat and swings his goaded Springbloom Druid over at Austin for 1 damage. Aaron then passes the turn to me. I untap, draw, and play a swamp as land for turn. I then pay 2 to cast a Star Compass, which enters tapped. Moving to combat, Ella joins my side, and I swing everything at Aaron because of Public Enemy enchanted on Adrex and Nev. On attack, eMpTyG Predator triggers, getting a +1/+1 counter, and I choose to exile Light Up the Stage from Ginger's graveyard. Aaron decides he'd rather not be attacked by everyone anymore and blocks Ella with Adrex and Nev. They both die. Aaron returns his commander to the command zone, takes 5 damage, and Ginger draws a card from Public Enemy. I then pass the turn to Austin. Austin untaps and exiles Terminal Agony under his Theater of Horrors and draws. He then plays a mountain as his land for turn. Austin then pays 6 to recast his commander, Anje, and passes to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and plays a mountain as land for turn. She starts off by paying 2 for an Orb of Dragonkind, and then she follows it up by tapping out to recast her commander, Firkraag. Scrying 1 from Path of Ancestry, she leaves the card on top. Moving to combat, Ginger sends Firkraag at me, goading eMpTyG Predator on attack. I have no response and take the damage. Ginger then passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron untaps and draws. Paying 7, he casts a Coma Cosmos Serpent. He follows that up by playing a Terramorphic Expanse. On Aaron's end step, I cast a Lethal Scheme targeting Coma before it can create a Coma Coil. Aaron has no response, and Coma is destroyed. Aaron then passes the turn to me. I untap and draw for turn. I then pay 4 to cast Carter Doom Scourge, forcing creatures my opponents control to attack each combat if able, and attack a player other than me if able. I move to combat and Ella clocks in for another hard day of work. I swing Ella at Ginger and eMpTyG Predator at Austin. On attack, eMpTyG Predator triggers, getting a +1/+1 counter, and I exile Coma from Aaron's graveyard. Ginger blocks Ella with her Frog Lizard token. Ella dies, triggering Carter, which drains each of my opponents for 1 life, and I gain 1. Austin declares no blocks and takes 5 in the air. When it connects, Ginger's Firkraag triggers, getting a +1/+1 counter and drawing her a card. All finished for now, I pass the turn to Austin. Austin untaps and exiles a gluttonous guest under his Theater of Horrors during his upkeep and draws for turn. He then plays a swamp. Paying 3, Austin casts Vampire Nighthawk. On ETB, Anje triggers and creates a blood token. Moving to combat, Austin is forced to swing with Anje because of Carter. He chooses to send her at Ginger. Ginger blocks Anje with her Frog Lizard token, and it dies. Austin moves to his second main phase, sacrificing a blood token to Anya's ability, draining us for 2, and he gains 2 life. With his Theater of Horrors now online, he casts a Gluttonous Guest from exile. Anya sees this and creates a blood token. Gluttonous also makes a blood token on ETB and gains Austin 1 life whenever a blood token is sacrificed. Having no other plays, he passes the turn to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and plays a Sulphur Falls. She then pays 5 to cast a Goldspan Dragon and scries 1 thanks to Path of Ancestry. She puts the card to the bottom of her library and then moves to combat, and Ginger has to attack with both of her creatures because of Carter. After a bit of deal making with Aaron, Ginger says she'll only swing Firkraag at him and send Goldspan into certain doom if he leaves her board alone. Aaron agrees, so Ginger swings Firkraag at him and Goldspan at Austin. On attacks, Ginger goads Springbloom Druid and Anya through Firkraag's ability and creates a treasure token through Goldspan. Austin happily blocks with his Vampire Nighthawk. Both it and Goldspan die, gaining Austin 2 life. Carter triggers because an attacking creature died and each of my opponents lose 1 life and I gain 1. In her second main phase, Ginger pays 6 for a Lalthus Dragon Queen. Ginger then passes the turn. On instuff, Aaron cracks his Terramorphic Expanse, fetching an island and putting it into play tapped. Aaron then untaps and draws. He pays 7 to cast an Avenger of Zendikar, creating 8/0/1 plant tokens, paying 2 to cast a discounted Junkwinder thanks to its affinity for tokens. He then moves to combat and attacks Austin with his goated Springbloom Druid. He blocks, killing it, and Carter triggers, draining all of my opponents for 1. Aaron passes the turn to me. On his instep, Ginger realizes she missed a Thematic Compass trigger, which allows her to flip it to Spires of Orzhaka. I then start my turn, untap, draw, and play a Haunted Ridge. I then move to combat, bringing Ella back in and swing her over at Aaron. He blocks with a Junkwinder. Ella dies, Carter drains my opponents for 1, and I gain 1 life. With no other plays for the turn, I pass it back to Austin. Austin untaps, exiles a Markov Enforcer under his Theater of Horrors, draws, and plays a Swamp as land for turn. He then sacrifices both of his blood tokens to Anya, draining each of us for a total of 4, and getting himself 6 because of Gluttonous Guest, adding an additional life gain when, a blood token sacrificed. Staring down a pretty scary board, he decides it's time for a board wipe. Paying 4 for a chain reaction, which will deal 17 damage to each creature, I respond by sacrificing Corridor to eMpTyG Predator, tapping it and giving it indestructible until end of turn. When eMpTyG becomes tapped, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and I choose to exile Goldspan Dragon from Ginger's graveyard. With the board now cleared up, Austin passes the turn to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and plays a Storm-Carved Coast as her land for turn. She then pays 9 to recast her commander. Since I am the only player with a creature to goad, Ginger swings Firkraag at me. I have no response and take 3 damage. Ginger realizes she missed a scry trigger from her Path of Ancestry and will let her scry. She decides to keep the card on top and then passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron untaps and draws for turn. He then pays 6 to cast a Progenitor Mimic, having it enter as a copy of my eMpTyG Predator. With no further actions this turn, he passes it over to me. I untap, draw, and play a Swamp as land for turn. I pay 5 to recast my commander Lagomos before proceeding to combat, where Ella clocks in for her notably less exciting shift than her last one. I swing Ella at Ginger and eMpTyG Predator at Aaron. On attack, eMpTyG Predator exiles Avenger of Zendikar from Aaron's graveyard and gets another +1/+1 counter. In response to attacks, Ginger taps her Spires of Orzhaka to remove Ella from combat. Aaron declares no blocks, taking 6, and going down to what should have been 16, but due to some technical difficulties, we lost Aaron's life total and thought he was at 21 after this attack, so It fortunately doesn't change the overall outcome of the game. So anyways, on combat damage, Firkraag triggers, getting a +1/+1 counter, and drawing Ginger a card. I then pass the turn to Austin. Austin untaps, exiles a mountain to his Theater of Horrors, and draws. He pays 4 to activate Theater of Horrors, dealing 1 damage to me. With the Theater's life loss condition now fulfilled, he pays 6 to cast Markov Enforcer from exile. On ETB, it fights Aaron's mimicked Amistron Predator, killing it and creating a blood token. All tapped out, he passes to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and plays a Prismatic Vista for turn. Paying 6 for an Ancient Copper Dragon, it gains haste because she uses Carnelian Orb to cast it. Path of Ancestry also triggers, and she scries 1, choosing to leave the card on top. Then Ginger follows this up by paying 4 to cast a Territorial Hellkite. At the beginning of combat, Territorial Hellkite requires Ginger to choose an opponent at random to attack. She rolls a dice to randomly select an opponent. I am selected, so Ginger continues through combat where Firkraag triggers, and she goads Amistron Predator and Markov Enforcer. Sending her commander at Austin and Hellkite at me, we both declare no blocks and I take 6 damage while Austin takes 10. When combat damage is dealt to a player, Ancient Copper Dragon triggers, and Ginger rolls a d20. She rolls 4 and creates 4 treasure tokens. Ginger then passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron untaps and draws for turn. He pays 6 to recast his commander Adrex and Nev. With no other plays, he then passes the turn to me. I untap and draw for turn. I then pay 3 to cast a Mayhem Devil. Before it resolves, Ginger activates her Prismatic Vista and fetches an island into play. I move to combat, and because Amistrom is goaded, I have to attack with it. In hopes of keeping Ginger from using her treasure tokens, I make a deal with Austin to help keep my Mayhem Devil alive. If he doesn't fight it with his Markov Enforcer, I promise not to attack him this turn. Austin agrees. I then swing Amistron at Aaron, Lagomos, and Ella at Ginger. On attack, Amistron Predator triggers, getting +1/+1 counter, and I exile Alphys from Ginger's graveyard. With no response, Ginger takes 3, Aaron takes 7. I then move to my end step and sacrifice Ella, triggering my Mayhem Devil to deal 1 damage to Ginger's face. Ginger realizes she missed a trigger from Territorial Hellkite and Amistron attacking, so we let her draw the 2 cards and put 2 +1/+1 counters on Firkraag. I then pass the turn to Austin. Austin untaps, exiles a Ghost Quarter to his Theater of Horrors, and draws for turn. Austin then asks me for a turn of immunity from Mayhem Devil triggers if he deals with Ginger's board. I agree not to direct any Mayhem triggers his way for at least 1 turn. He then pays 1 to put Akaya's Ghost Form on his Markov Enforcer. He then follows it up by paying 8 to recast his commander Anje, triggering Markov Enforcer when she enters. He targets Firkraag with its fight ability, killing both creatures. Kaya's Ghost Form triggers and Markov Enforcer returns to play when it dies. While its fight triggers on the stack, Ginger offers to not swing Ancient Copper Dragon at Austin during her next turn if he doesn't kill it. He agrees, having it instead target my Lagomos. I respond by sacrificing Lagomos to Amistron Predator to prevent Austin from getting a blood token. With no other plays, he then passes the turn to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and plays a Castle Vantress for turn. She starts off by paying 1 for a Soul Ring. She recasts Firkraag and scries 1 through Path of Ancestry, putting the card on the bottom of her library. Moving to combat, and before attacks are declared, Ginger has to roll for Territorial Hellkite and randomly selects Austin. She swings the Hellkite at him, Firkraag at me, and Copper Dragon at Aaron. On attacks, Ginger goads Markov Enforcer, Amistron Predator, and Adrex and Nev. Paying for Adrex and Nev's ward cost with the treasure token, Mayhem Devil triggers, and I target Ginger. Continuing through combat, Austin takes 6, I take 3, and Aaron takes 6. Territorial Hellkite triggers Firkraag since it had to attack and gets a +1/+1 counter. Ginger also draws a card. Ancient Copper Dragon triggers when combat damage is done, so Ginger rolls a d20, and she scores a natural 20 and creates 20 treasure tokens. Moving to her second main phase, she pays 7, cracking 3 treasure tokens and takes 3 from my Mayhem Devil to cast a Dracuseth Maw of Flames. Ginger then passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron untaps and draws. Paying 5, he casts a Merc Fiend Liege. He follows it up by paying 5 again and taps Adrex and Nev for convoke cost so he can cast Scatter the Seeds. This creates 3 1/1 Saproling creature tokens, which is now doubled to 6 due to Adrex and Nev's ability. Aaron then passes the turn to me. I untap, Aaron untaps with me because of his Merc Fiend Liege, and I draw for turn. Paying 3 for a Woe Strider, Ginger sacrifices 2 treasure tokens in response, and I send my Mayhem Devil triggers at Ginger. She then casts a Resculpt targeting my Mayhem Devil. In response, Austin pays 2 to sacrifice 2 of his blood tokens. This triggers Mayhem Devil again, and I target Ginger for another 2 damage. Austin then discards 2 cards and draws 2 cards from his blood tokens. I then sacrifice Mayhem Devil to eMpTyG Predator, which causes eMpTyG to tap, giving it a +1/+1 counter, and I choose to exile Epicure of Blood from Austin's graveyard. Mayhem Devil sees itself get sacrificed and deals 1 damage, and I send that damage to Ginger. Then, Resculpt fizzles, and my Woe Strider finally resolves. On ETB, it creates a 0/1 goat token. I then pay 5 for Grey Merchant of Asphodel. On ETB, since my devotion to black is 4, each of my opponents lose 4, and I gain 12 life, going up to 31. I then pass the turn to Austin. Austin untaps, exiles the Stormkirk captain to his Theater of Horrors, and draws for turn. Austin then does some politicking with the table and asks Ginger for 1 turn of full immunity for himself and his board. She can attack him, hurt his board, or use her dragon's ability to target Austin or his stuff. In exchange, he won't destroy any of her creatures, so she can try to take me out. Ginger agrees. Austin then pays 4 to cast a Falconwrath Noble, creating a blood token through Anje. Markov Enforcer also triggers, and Austin chooses to have it fight my Woe Strider. In response, I sack my goat token to it, scrying 1, and put the card to the bottom of my library. Then I sacrifice Woe Strider to eMpTyG Predator to prevent him from getting another blood token. When my creature dies, Austin's Falconwrath Noble triggers twice, and Austin decides to target me, draining me for 2 life and gaining himself 2. He then pays 3 for a Dominating Vampire, allowing him to untap and gain control of my eMpTyG Predator until end of turn. His Markov Enforcer also triggers, and he has it fight one of Aaron's Saproings. When it dies, Falconwrath Noble triggers again, draining me for 1 more life. Moving to combat, he sends his goated Markov Enforcer at Aaron and eMpTyG Predator at me. On attack, eMpTyG gets a +1/+1 counter, and Austin exiles Carter from my graveyard. Aaron blocks with a Saproling token, and I declare no blocks and take 8. When Aaron's token dies, Austin targets Falconwrath's trigger at me again. In his second main phase, Austin sacrifices my eMpTyG Predator to Anje, draining us for 2 and gaining 2 more life. He then passes the turn to Ginger. Ginger untaps, draws, and reconsiders her life choices. She pays 5 to cast a Glorybringer, scrying 1 through Path of Ancestry, and leaves the card on top. She moves to combat, randomly selecting me with Territorial Hellkite. She then swings all of her dragons at me. On attack, she honors her deal with Austin by not exerting Glorybringer and targets Aaron with Drakuseth's first damage trigger, killing him, and chooses not to use the other 2 instances of 3 damage. I get Dwagon to death, triggering Ginger's Ancient Copper Dragon. She rolls a 15 on the d20 and makes 15 more treasures. In her second main phase, she pays 5 to cast a Wrathful Dragon. Realizing her only outs would break her deal with Austin, Ginger sees no other options and decides to go out on her own terms. Paying 1, she casts a Blasphemous Act. This deals 13 damage to each creature, including all of her dragons. Wrathful Dragon triggers 6 times, and she targets Austin with 6 instances of 13 damage to the face for a total of 78 damage. Due to the way state-based actions resolve, the active player in order has their triggers go on the stack first. Then, Austin's triggers from Falconwrath resolve first, which means Ginger dies before Wrathful Red Dragon's triggers resolve. Austin targets Ginger with all the Falconwrath triggers, killing her before the Fireball Blast can hit him. Austin wins! GG! Oh boy, was there a lot of politicking during that game. I hope you had fun watching though, and you know what? There's some really cool MVP cards, and at the end of the, episode, we usually like to call out cards that we felt deserved an MVP shout out. So specifically, I think Austin had quite a few, but the 2 that really stood out, at least to us, was Markov Enforcer and Falconwrath Noble. One, because, the Enforcer was doing its job and enforcing, knocking out some dragons and all the other creatures that were a problem on the board for Austin pretty efficiently. And then Falconwrath Noble obviously helped, Austin for the win. So that, really stood out to us quite a bit. And I think what is extra cool is, again, this was only a $30 budget deck for Austin, at least at the time that he purchased the cards. The prices for every card, I believe, was under $1. So I think that in itself is just really cool, considering the fact of how much he kicked our butt. So Appreciate everyone who, has been supporting the channel, and thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. Bye.